Hey guys, hey YouTube, this is Rob. Welcome to my Graveyard Shift video primer, I guess we'll call it. This is just an explanation of the deck, and we're going to go over some preliminary, or my preliminary list, and give you sort of an idea of what I'm going for here. There'll be some videos that follow that show the deck in action, and I hope you guys enjoy. So without further ado, let's get started here. So what is it? Okay, Graveyard Shift, what is it? It's mono black. You can't really call it anything but a mid-range deck, but it's on the fast side of mid-range, okay guys? You know, mid-range is a rather broad heading, if you will, category, and it has a spectrum of its own. You know, there's sort of quicker versions, and then there's sort of slower, grindier versions, and everything else in between. And I would categorize this as yes, you can't say it's anything but a mid-range deck, but it's on the fast side of mid-range, and it has a fairly healthy element of control to it as well. So it's kind of like quick mid-range with nasty disruption and control involved. So we'll take a look at the list, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So we'll just start out. The curve caps at 4. I think it's very important to discuss mana curve in any kind of primer video. You cannot ignore mana curve when you guys are brewing decks, okay? If you're copying decks from pros and stuff like that, they've probably already worked it out pretty well. But you have got to consider mana curve. You can't have two things that are too top heavy. With mid-range decks, it slogs everything down. You know, so you don't want to be jammed up your 3 and 4 CC range. But at the other point, you know, at the other side of that coin is you want to have enough gas when you hit that those turns that you're able to play meaningful and or stabilizing cards. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So starting out at the 1 CC, we're fairly well between 1 and 2 CC. That's where most of my deck lies, and even though you consider this a mid-range deck, you can see why I consider it more on the fast if you start taking a look at the cards. So we've got Blood-Soaked Champions here, and there's a case here for not only Blood-Soaked, but you could possibly think of running in conjunction with him between, you know, or we'll just say X number of Grave Crawlers, which are quite similar. I like the Blood-Soaked Champions better than the Grave Crawlers personally, and I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong. When I first read the spoiled card, I thought that it was inferior to Gravecrawler because Gravecrawler can be cast with Mutavault. Mutavault counts as a zombie, so there's a nice interaction with that. However, there's a few things about Raid I didn't understand at the time, and I didn't notice quite the nuance of it. It triggers his own Raid, which is pretty cool. So, you know, if you have the mana open and you just kind of flail swing at him, maybe he chump blocks something, or takes the damage or whatever. If it bolts it, he bolts it, and then you can raid him back. So, at an instant speed, by the way, which is not too much of a concern in this particular deck, but in some cases, like especially in standard decks, you know, being able to bring him back instantaneously after attackers have been declared can be a thing. Like Butcher the Horde can eat him, you know, twice if you have the mana or whatever. So, in any case, he triggers his own raid, so he comes back. Not only can he bring himself back, but anything else you're doing here can bring him back as well. So the rest of my 1 CC is taken up by, I've got 3 of each, IOK and Thoughtseize, nice even split, giving you 6, pretty good chance, you know, pretty high chance, about 50% chance of drawing one or the other in your opener. So, you know, you have a good shot at either playing this on turn 1, which is a very aggressive play, or, you know, possibly disrupting their turn 1 play, or, you know, you have options, and these are the 2 premier discard spells in Modern. Okay, so those are your top two. Impossible to say which one is really better than the other. All right, so moving on to 2cc. I mean, obviously Bob. You know, the one of the greatest creatures ever printed. It's seen quite a drop in density in Modern. It hasn't been being played lately, but I think you're going to see it being played more and more. I think the cost of this card is going to go up. So think about getting some if you haven't gotten them already. It's card advantage. It's like he hits the deck and he's got to get caught. He needs to be dealt with immediately or he snowballs you out of control. So yeah, there's not much to say about Bob. We all know about him. He's great. He belongs here. It's an aggro plan. He swings. He's just great. Now, let's take a look at this. Pack Rat. Another card that is, I think, really underrated. There was some talk of him last summer, even showing up in some Jund builds. Of course, I use him in my 8-rack deck, but we're not really talking about that now. He's both early, you can play him early, possibly as bait for something else like your Dark Confident, which you don't care about. Or you can, when he's another card that when he hits the deck, he must be dealt with right away. Because let's say you play him to turn 2, turn 3, he's already online for copies. So if he doesn't eat if he doesn't eat removal right away, he could easily snowball even one copy off of him. Could be good game right then and there. So he's an engine. He turns, if you get him late game, he's a great card. Playing him early game is not bad at all. He turns any card you have into free. It's like his top decking is great, and he has great interaction with things like Bloodghast. You pitch the Bloodghast, pay a land, get it back, attack with everything. He's got interaction with a lot of these guys because it's the guy that doesn't die and another guy that doesn't die. So that's kind of like why I call it Graveyard Shift, because you got a lot of things here that are just keep coming back, and you cannot get rid of these damn things. So in lieu of Lords, which is what Merfolk runs, I'm running guys that are hard to deal with. So it ends up playing out a lot. I'm going to be honest with you, it ends up playing out quite a bit like Merfolk. It'll feel like you're playing Merfolk, but you don't have to use Merfolk. You can use these awesome black guys, and then you also have the option of having actual removal, which blue does not have, So it's kind of like black Merfolk, plus a great control package, kind of weaved in there seamlessly, with card advantage and such. So Victim of Night is my personal removal of choice. There's many options here in many cases for, Smother and Disfigure and, depending on your meta, Doom Blades or, what's the other one? Go for the Throat. There's lots of choices. This is what I use. Feel free to mix and match to your meta. So that covers the 2cc curve. Now we're going to move on to 3cc. I only have one. Liliana. Now, great interaction with a lot of the cards that you're happy to pitch. And she's just a house. She can keep your opponent's hand empty. She can get rid of creatures that have hexproof. She's the best planeswalker in Modern. There's no reason not to play her here. At 3cc, she's just you're never unhappy to see Liliana in your hand. Alright, so I mean, all of those things right there are probably, kind of I wouldn't say no-brainer, but like you could all, those are all Modern cards. Nobody's going to argue that. Okay, so now let's talk about some cards that people would never think could see play in Modern. Deck Demon, Desecration Demon. Deck Demon for short was his nickname in Standard. I think he's a very efficient creature. He's a 4/4 flyer, he's a 6/6 flyer for 4. Comes in untapped. The opponent's, his only downside is not really a downside. If your opponent is sacking dudes to tap him down and make him bigger, I think you're in a pretty good position. I've never really had too many scenarios in all, even in standard, in games where people were sacking cards to tap him down, and it felt like I was in a bad position. I always felt like I had the upper hand anyway. So that's a good thing. There's never really, you know, it's unlikely that there's going to be like this plethora. You're going to be playing an opponent that just has a plethora of just expendable creatures. With all the other things you've got going on here, it's not like this is your only creature on the board. You're going to have a lot of stuff on the board. So he's not going to have a ton of resources to just throw up and, you know, just keep this guy tapped down indefinitely. He's going to have to deal with a full-on 6/6 flyer that can come out on turn 4 and just start smashing face. So, yeah, I think he's really relevant. I'll play him over Phyrexian Obliterator any day of the week, to be honest with you. He's bigger, he flies, and that's pretty much the main reason. I think the Obliterator sometimes gets worked around in cases. I think it's harder to stop. You know, the Obliterator's great, but I'd rather have something that flies, and that's really it. And he's even bigger. He's a 6/6 that flies. I want to get over their defenses, and there's not a lot of flyers that can stop this thing. Obliterator, there's a lot of stuff on the ground that, you know, maybe they can get around the nasty claws. So your other option is Obliterator. If you feel more comfortable with Obliterator, go ahead and use him. I would say, you know, or a mix of the two, you know, try them both out. But don't sleep on Deck Demon, okay? Just because he's not Obliterator, Phyrexian Obliterator, doesn't mean he doesn't have a place in the deck. And he also has a much easier casting cost than Obliterator, which might not seem like it's a problem in Mono Black, but Mutavaults are great, guys. This is, you know, it's Black, quote unquote's best manland option. We don't really have anything else. So, and you can also use, instead of Mutavaults, I like them, but you know, you can swing with them and triggers a raid, blah blah blah. And I like the Mutavaults, but you could use this as a utility land slot. You know, your Ghost Quarters, your Tech Edges, or whatever you want. You know, you could take the deck in that direction. You know, I have Herborgs to sort of mitigate the colorless, but you want to hit 2 black. You got to hit 2 black. So that could possibly be an issue. I've played a lot of mono black, and with this land base here, hitting 2 black can sometimes. I've got 24 on this one. It can sometimes be an issue if you draw the Vault, which is a great card to draw. Hitting 4 black. For the Phyrexian Obliterator could be a big deal. In that case, you're probably not going to be able to run too many, if any, colorless lands. You almost have with 4. If you're running Obliterator, it sort of limits the amount of utility lands you can run. I've chosen Mutavault here, but you can make cases for others as well. Alright, so the final card in the list that I'm going to get, probably screamed at is it's bad, it's a standard card, stop putting all of your standard, well, these are not standard cards anymore, these were standard cards a while ago when I was using them, but, you know, stop putting your standard cards in modern decks, they're bad, and they don't do it well. Yeah, mostly you're right, but Whip is an interesting card. It's an interesting card because, especially in a deck like this, where we have so many creatures, it's going to be like, stuff is swinging, you can't get rid of these things, these little guys that they just keep swinging over and over. Well, when it hits the deck, it does something right away. It could stabilize you that turn, even if you're only, like, you know, sacrificial swinging Bloodghasts and Blood-Soaked Champions. You know, you're swinging and you're gaining life from it, and that as soon as it hits the deck, it could be what stabilizes you right away. You can whip back targets like Rat and make a copy of it. You can whip back Deck Demon that they've, you know, whatever, destroyed somehow. You know, you don't really want to whip back the Bloodghasts and the Blood-Soaked, but you could in a pinch. But there's a lot of targets for Whip is the point here, and the main thing is the lifelink which really gives you a huge edge over any decks running red. Decks running red, they do not like lifelink at all. So, and then the secondary ability of being able to get extra value over your demons and you know, pack rats and stuff is just gravy on it, really. You know, you whip back whatever, just whip stuff back. If you know, whatever it is, it's got haste, so that could be the thing. Yeah, there's room for development here. This is, like I said, this is really just a preliminary primer based on what I see as an absence of mono black aggro strategies. You know, you have your mono black control deck, which isn't using many of these cards. I mean, some of them, yes, but this is different than that, and this is certainly not mono black infect. And mono black control is using like sweepers and things like whatever that black guy is, who gets like Gerard's Messenger. He's got the not the persist, but the other one, which he gets bigger when he dies, but it's kind of the same gig. Yeah, they use him and Gravecrawler sometimes, but it's really a lot of discard and sweepers and removal. This is more, and you can still consider it I guess you consider it a control-ish deck, but it ends up playing, the best ones are infect, use the creatures with the infect package because they're more efficient. You can get away with less slots and still deal lethal damage, you know, that Phyrexian Crusader and stuff. So I'm trying to do something a little bit different here, and I think it's different enough that it warrants its own primer. I don't think it belongs in with the other decks I've compared, and I think people agree with that. If you don't agree, post your comments. But so let me know what you think about the primer and what I can do to improve. The sideboard is very preliminary. The deck itself is preliminary. You know, it's open to suggestions. Let's get some discussion going if there's interest. The sideboard's real preliminary. I mean, I just kind of just threw something together there for the purposes of just getting out there and playing. But let me know what you think about the primer tutorial, and check out some of the videos of the deck in action working pretty well. I think it's very strong. It wins pretty good. You know, you've got gas, you've got control, you've got removal, you've got plenty of slots you can dedicate to all kinds of different metas, whatever you may need in there. More removal, more control, discard spells, whatever. It's black. You got options. You got a lot of options for both aggro and control and mid-range. So let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you watching, and that is the Graveyard Shift. See ya.